Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this ROR annual meeting. This presentation is sharing a little bit how we at ChronosHub try to streamline open access workflows, where ROR really is the key of opening the door to many of the open access challenges that are out there. So open access is great, of course, but it also leads to increasing complexities, costs, and frustrations that we all know. And just to give a quick view a little bit of how we see this, we have more and more funders issuing policies that drive researchers to publish in certain ways or in certain journals that need to be compliant with these policies. And this makes it quite complicated for researchers to know what path to take, what license to choose, and things like that. These policies also drive the publishers to develop new business models. And we have, I think today, about 28 different open access business models or mechanisms, like gold and hybrid with APC vouchers and waivers and discounts and read and publish agreements, publish and read agreements, subscribe to open, and so forth. And this makes it obviously really tricky for institutions to know really what articles to approve as part of an agreement or to pay an invoice for. But from our perspective, the worst situation is really for the researchers. So we always try to put them first, because if we look at this context, they have to fill in huge forms when submitting to publishers, then other long forms to report back to funders on the outputs of their grants, and then again at the institutions populating manually the same information over and over again into, for example, institutional repositories or CRIS systems. So there are true challenges because stakeholders do act largely in silos. There are a lot of systems, but they don't communicate very well with each other. And this means that the data is very fragmented and we have no really reliable analytics. So this becomes really time consuming for everyone and costly, as we have to do a lot of this manual work, a lot of duplication. And in addition, a risk of being non-compliant, both for the individual researchers, but also for the institution. So if we now look at how we work at ChronosHub, where we have a platform trying to support all types of open access, we really want to streamline the author journey and unburdening the researchers as much as possible. And in order to do that, well, we need to automate a lot of things. And automation in this context means integration also with a lot of different other systems. And along the way, we'll see that the ROR IDs are really crucial as enablers for automation. It's not sufficient alone always, but it's a really crucial component. So if we look at the author journey, they need to select a journal where they also need to understand who will pay for an APC, for example, or is this covered by a read and publish agreement? And this comes from the fact that we have modeled the system that if you're an author, we know what organization you belong to, and the organization in turn, into the data model, is related to agreement information. And so this is where we already, this early stage, use ROR IDs and to connect the dots, if you like. The second step in the journey is that you can submit your article through ChronosHub into these peer review systems. The peer review systems like ScholarOne, Editorial Manager, eJournal Press, and others are typically increasingly using organizational identifiers, and that's great, but they very often use Ringgold IDs instead. So here we have built an integration with the Ringgold API, so we can send the ROR ID, not directly to the API, but we have the ROR ID mapped with ISNI IDs, and ISNI IDs can be sent to this API, and we get a Ringgold ID back, and hence we can establish this one-to-one mapping. Same thing upon acceptance, but in the other direction, we go from Ringgold ID to an ISNI ID to a ROR ID, again, using the Ringgold API. And then we use that information on the corresponding author's affiliation primarily, but also the other co-authors' affiliations, and also information about the grants and the funder to streamline license management for publishers and open access processing, both for institutions, publishers, and funders. In the way that we ensure that any agreements that are there are applied with the right amount of discount, for example, but also enabling all kinds of eligibility checks to be done automatically and auto-approve articles or auto-reject articles. And this is where the organizational affiliation and the funder association or funder acknowledgement are really crucial. And so, of course, for organizations, we use ROR IDs. funders are also organizations. We actually also use ROR IDs for them, but they are then in turn also mapped to the funder registry IDs. And then we go through to billing and collection. This is where we very often integrate with finance systems. So again, we need to be able to know exactly who the debtors are, and so we can update finance systems correctly. This is quite challenging because there are not many finance systems, or any, that use ROR IDs. So we have to create, when we set ChronosHub up for an institution or a publisher, do a mapping on beforehand between the organizations. And because they don't usually only have internal org IDs for the debtors. Then for publishers, we send this to their production system to take the article into production or publish it. Then for reporting, it goes without saying, super crucial to have good, unique identifiers for the organizations. So ROR IDs plays a crucial role here. And then we increasingly reuse this data to auto-populate institute repositories and CRIS systems. So we also make that available over our API, along with the full text and all the other article metadata that we need to do a full automated integration. So because without these IDs or identifiers, there will always be a need for manual validation or manual sort of retyping of information. So we think ROR IDs is a really fantastic initiative. Hopefully, we'll see that more and more systems pick this up. The principles apply not only to ChronosHub, but literally for all systems in the research ecosystem. With that said, hopefully we'll be able to engage in a very exciting and interesting discussion afterwards. Thank you very much.